Hey everybody, welcome back to our new Wednesday edition of the CCC. I am extremely excited about today's drink because it's a new classic on top of a new classic.
Extremely excited.
I would say this is my top three right now in terms of, well, I'm gonna be clear, not like of a new drink I just had at a bar or someone that a recipe a friend just shared that I'm just sort of sampling right now in terms of like go-to. If someone comes over and I've got 3 drinks to make, this is one of my 3 drinks.
Okay.
Partially because sometimes I get lazy when I'm tending bar, and this isn't one of those easy, equal part cocktails from one of my favorite books, but it's also just an amazing combination of sour and amari. Well, in this case, it's a aperitif. But
I think it does. It checks all the boxes as far as like boozy, but smoky, but sour, but sweet, but bitter.
And refreshing. So so it checks all the boxes. And you'll notice we have 2 different things in our bar. And that's because what I wanted to show everybody was, so one of our old new classics, because a new classic in the paper plane was, well, I believe it's actually referred to as a new classic because it's not a Negroni or Boulevardier or Old Fashioned or Manhattan, blah, blah, blah. But it's one of the ones that most good bars go to. That's the paper plane, which was created by Sam Ross at Attaboy. And
like 5 minutes ago.
Well, which is why it's a new classic.
Well, it's hard to call something a classic.
A new classic is what it's referred to.
As in, like, it's gonna be a classic?
As in, it's a contemporary classic. Is that better? It's become a classic for many people that like serious cocktails and respect Sam Ross, who's made quite a few creations that are popular.
So, just because to me the term classic implies age.
So I'll give you an example since I know you love sports. Often there'll be a great baseball game, football game, basketball game, fill in the blank, and it's one of those just, down to the wire, back and forth, amazing games that you're never going to forget, but it would just happen the week prior. Well, a network like ESPN may call it a new classic, and they're going to replay it as a new classic because it's not from the 60s or 70s, it's from 5 minutes ago, but it's already going to be a classic.
So it's going to be a classic.
Right, which is why they call it a new classic.
Okay, so what other cocktails, like Oaxacan Old Fashioned?
I would call it Last Word a new classic. We agree, disagree?
Okay.
That's one that comes to mind, although even that isn't too far off in terms of the ratios of bitter and spirit and sour.
So by classic, what you really mean is recognizable, right? Like a Last Word is something you could go into any bar and order, and it's not like a made up cocktail by this bar or that bar. It's a legit cocktail that has an actual recipe.
And it has a following, but it's not old enough to where everybody knows about it. It's not in Mr. Boston's bar book from the 1920s.
Only because that was from the 1920s.
Right, it's a new classic.
So most books written now will include it.
You mean like this?
Okay, fair enough.
But
now that we've defined new classic, which just to me seems like a little bit of a contradiction in terms, so I just needed to define that.
Yeah, I feel pretty confident in that both the paper plane, which is bourbon, Aperol, Nonino, and lemon, as well as I peel these back, and bourbon becomes Mezcal, Aperol actually stays, Nonino becomes yellow chartreuse, and lemon becomes lime. It's gone from a paper plane to, we haven't even named our drink today. Shared our name. What's our drink today? It's a cool name.
Well, our drink is called Naked and Famous. And I actually meant to ask you, what's with the name?
Well, you and I were just having a conversation very similar to this a couple hours ago about creating drink names. And I find that it's one of those names it makes you think, okay, where did it come from? But it's a conversation starter. It's catchy. I have no idea where the name comes from, like the actual definition of why, but it comes from.
We don't question it. We go with it. We don't question it. But like, where the hell did this name come from?
Well, it comes from a bar in New York called Pouring Ribbons. I know that, but I don't know why that bartender came up with Naked Famous, other than it could have just been this kind of a catchy name.
Is that Joaquin Simo?
That sounds quite accurate.
I think he's the bartender at Pouring Ribbons.
Of course, you know that. Anyways, we've now spent like an hour and a half talking about classics and new classics and names and definitions. But the point being is we're spending all this time because this is a really amazing cocktail. Because it's equal parts, you can get lazy and kind of forget, is it 3/4, is it 1 ounce? It doesn't matter. Just keep it equal.
Which also makes it very easy to multiply for your friends.
Yes, until you have too many, then you kind of forget how math works. And
I don't know what you're talking about.
so
it's super easy to make. You could double it, triple it, quadruple it, and make 10 of them for your friends. We will show you how.
So citrus means shake, means shakerton. Okay, equal parts.
Shakerton.
Oh, I do want to point out, this is one of my new go-tos, only because I just now found it in Houston. I found this before in Mexico, like years ago, and I actually saved the bottle with like this much in it just because I love the bottle. I didn't want to use it all, but now they sell it specs downtown. So well priced, what is it, 30, low 30s, 32, 34, something like that. I think it's got, it's clean, but it's still very mezcal. It's smoky, it's well priced. If you're looking for just a go-to kind of your house mezcal, this is my new one.
So I will share as well. This is de Rumbes. And it's a very cool bottle because it's like the design is on that side and all the different varieties are a different color and a slightly different design. So they are very pretty. I may have attended an online discussion with one of the reps from it who was very excited about it. And so I was very excited about it and I went and bought some. And I will be honest, it is not my favorite.
So let's hope their brand ambassador is not watching our video right now.
In fairness, I went for the lower price point for the $30 one and not the $65, $70, $75, $80 one, which maybe is great, but their lower end one, there are better lower end mezcals out there.
That's true. And I will say, this is a drink that you want to taste mezcal. Like some mezcals are kind of almost like tequila. They're almost too smooth, not smoky enough. Certainly a personal preference, but I think this is a drink that you want to taste that smokiness. So
yeah, that's true. You probably want a more powerful one in here.
All right. So equal parts. 3/4 is the standard recipe. Again, I may or may not have made this before with 1 ounce, just because you want a larger drink, but keep it equal. It doesn't really matter at that point.
I mean, most drinks end up equaling, in a 3.5 to 4 ounce.
Right. This
total
was only
volume.
before shaking.
So, right. That's why if you do 3/4 of each, then you end up with 3 ounces before you shake, which really ends up perfect most of the time.
Yeah.
But yes, if you want a larger one,
so
with that.
3/4 mezcal, 3/4 Aperol, 3/4 yellow chartreuse, which if you guys saw our video last week, we brought yellow chartreuse out for the easy peasy.
So how do you feel about people subbing in green chartreuse here?
Well, it's funny you say that. I was just about to, as I was thinking about Aperol, I mean, again, this is just a variation on paper plane. So I'm guessing that you could do all kinds of subs here. Like I'd be curious how this would taste in Campari instead of Aperol. So green chartreuse, you could use Strega, which we're starting to test now with our to-go cocktails, which I think is a fun one as well. I think it's a little sweeter. It's got a little more interesting. I think it's more complex than yellow chartreuse, but it's different.
Yeah.
Lemon, lime. I mean, this one calls for lime. If nothing else, to be different than the paper plane, but also the lime works nicely with mezcal. So,
and as you've pointed out to me before, in Mexico, it's the same thing.
True. I think I would say this. I would try this new classic recipe first, and then try different subs to see what you like. Otherwise, you have no idea, you have no baseline.
Said that it's sort of like we've said before, it's a formula, right? It's like a 3/4 citrus, 3/4 base spirit, and then like 3/4 of 2 different amari that one is a little herby, one is a little more bitter and citrusy. So play with it. If y'all come up with your own riff, let us know.
And a clever name, but it's got to be catchy like Naked Famous.
Yeah. 3/4 lime.
Yeah. Chilling in a coupe glass or a chilled coupe glass would be ideal here. All right, add your ice.
Let's add ice and shake it.
Yeah, and I would say this is a drink that if you're gonna go extra shaking, I think this is good. It's really good, nice and chilled, personally, especially when it's hot out right now. All right, with citrus, we're gonna fine strain it. I did not pre-strain mine today, so I'll say it's a really pretty color.
It's a pretty color. That's the Aperol talking.
Yeah. In terms of garnish, I've never garnished my Naked Famous cocktails. I mean, you could put a lime twist in if you wanted to, but it really doesn't call for anything. I think it's got enough going on.
I mean,
So,
you could have fun with a garnish for Naked and Famous.
some worm
I was
salt.
thinking more along the lines of like a straw from like a bachelorette party.
One of those little naked lady straws.
You know, or like a penis straw.
Yeah, 2 boobs. Yeah. So, you know, I said I was excited about today's cocktail, which I often am, by the way. If you've noticed a trend, I'm usually excited about our cocktails, so there's kind of a problem there. But I'm extra excited about next week. Again, you guys already know this, so I'm kind of speaking to the choir here, preaching to the choir. But it is Negroni Week, which we'll tell you more about next week. But it started, 5, 6 years ago? Sort of a co-branded effort between Campari and Imbibe Magazine. And it's all about enjoying Negronis, but also charity and getting out and enjoying Negronis in different forms and fashions around the country. And then those bars are contributing to various local charities. This year, there's sort of a twist on it because obviously a lot of bars are open. So we'll talk more about it next week. But if you never had a Negroni, we're going to have some fun spins on them next week. So I'm looking forward to that.
Don't own Campari. You might as well, because, you know, all of your social media feeds will be flooded with it next week.
Yes. So it's actually a big deal now.
It is a big deal, and it's great because it's giving back to lots of really good causes. I mean, it's drinking for cause, and like that speaks to us in a very real way. So it's very meaningful for us, and we have a lot of fond memories connected to it. So we'll be playing with that next week.
All right, guys. Have a good week. We'll see you next week over Negronis. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, Jason.